I'd like to call this meeting to order. If I could have everyone take their seats. Folks who are the ex officio members take their seats as indicated. Everyone else, for now, in the pews, I guess we call it. So, good afternoon, everybody. Today is Monday, October 20th. My name is Bob Blumenfield. Welcome to the first inaugural meeting of the Los Angeles-Eilat Innovation and Cooperation Task Force. It's my honor to be here, along with the Consul General David Siegel, to serve as the co-governing chairs of this task force. This is a great day for the history of Los Angeles, the 55-year-old relationship with our sister city, Eilat, and in the decades of historic friendship between our two great nations. Israel and Los Angeles share so much, and I know everybody here understands that intrinsically. We're two innovation centers, two promised lands. Israel is a democracy founded on the principles of complete equality of social and political rights to all its inhabitants, irrespective of religion, race, or gender, and guaranteed freedom of religion, conscience, language, education, and culture. A true startup nation that has made the desert bloom, forged a lasting peace with her neighbors, launched satellites, led the world in microprocessor and cellular technology, and even advised our own airports on security matters. What's more, Israel is a pluralistic society that recognizes and celebrates cultural diversity, safeguards religious liberty, treats gays and lesbians with respect and dignity, and protects them from discrimination and hate crimes, and promotes education for men and women. With one of the largest Jewish communities in the world, Los Angeles also plays host to one of the largest Israeli-American communities anywhere in the world, and as such has played a central role in strengthening the U.S.-Israel relationship. On a personal note, I've been working on strengthening the U.S.-Israel relationship for decades in many different capacities, even before I was ever in elected office. When I used to work for Congressman Howard Berman and he was chair of the International Relations Committee, I spent a lot of time focusing on how to strengthen that U.S.-Israel relationship. And as a member of the California Assembly, prior to me being in this council, I championed several groundbreaking legislative policies, including issues around divestment of Iran, but also worked to promote investment, innovation, and cooperation with Israel by establishing an MOU between California and Israel based on renewable technology research and development. Basically, to give you a little history, the work took the form of a bill. In fact, Lee Wallach in the audience was one who originally gave me the idea for a MOU with Israel and California. And we put that into a bill, AB 1032, to direct California to enter into an MOU with Israel. Governor Schwarzenegger, recognizing the value of such a partnership, signed this MOU when we were both in Israel in 2009, which led to a renewed push by Governor Jerry Brown to take that letter of intent that was inspired by the original bill and move it into reality. Just this past March, it was my pleasure to be with the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, here in California as he and Governor Brown signed the MOU that will ensure that California and Israel share more than just climate and culture, but reputations as two of the most important centers of innovation and technology in the world. It's work that dovetailed both with my passion for the U.S.-Israel relationship and my work both in the Assembly and here in the City Council, where I chair the city's Innovation, Technology, and General Services Committee and serve as Vice Chair of the Energy and Environment Committee to safeguard environment, advance innovation, technology, and government. For me, green tech and clean tech is a passion that has fueled me for many years, both as a legislator and now as a city council member. And today, it's very exciting because we're taking this one step further by establishing this task force for which it's not just me, Bob Blumenfield, establishing this task force. The entire city council voted unanimously to move forward with this task force. We in Los Angeles are creating the model for implementation of that state MOU, and we're doing it like so many things cutting edge. We're doing it right here in Los Angeles. Central to much of this work has been a close working relationship and a personal friendship with the Consul General of the State of Israel in Los Angeles, David Siegel. And with that, I'd like to introduce my fellow governing chair of this task force, the Consul General David Siegel, to say a few opening remarks. Mr. Siegel.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be here representing the State of Israel as co-chairs in this inaugural meeting, this very important task force on issues of clean tech, water, critical issues to both our countries and to humanity. I wanted to thank you for your leadership all these years. And now we see much of this come to fruition. We have a state-to-state MOU that was signed between the Prime Minister of Israel and the Governor of California earlier this year. We have a whole host of agreements that are flowing as a result of that MOU. Today we're seeing a realization of that MOU right here in Los Angeles, thanks to your leadership and to the City Council, and we're very, very proud of this moment. We have much to do on water. Water is an urgent issue for Israel, for California, for the United States, and for the world. It's an issue of urgency, but it's also an issue of long-term security. It will drive politics, geostrategic relations for many, many years to come, and it is very important to be ahead of the curve on these technologies, everything that has to do with water management and recycling and desalinization, creation of water, management of water, conservation of water, and this is what we're so proud to be partnering with you here today. We have one of the most preeminent scientists in Israel and the world that is with us today, Professor Adar, and we'll hear from him very soon. So for all those reasons, we're grateful, we're proud, and we're committed to this partnership between Los Angeles, the City of Eilat, the State of Israel, in order to move forward on innovation, move forward on the issues that are critical to us and to humanity.
Thank you. So I'm sure it's evident to everyone here, this task force represents a historic opportunity for collaboration and innovation with our city here in Los Angeles and the State of Israel. As I mentioned, Israel and Los Angeles share two of the most vibrant centers for technology, and working together we can be a force multiplier as we work to confront the shared challenges, especially but not limited to water scarcity as well as energy issues. And we have a mission statement I want to read into the record, which is just sort of to get us started. And basically it says, the Los Angeles-Eilat Innovation and Cooperation Task Force is built upon the 55-year sister city relationship between Los Angeles and Eilat, and will serve as a two-way conduit to facilitate the sharing of technologies, best practices, and innovative core competencies from each city and each state. So, per the motion that was passed by this council that I put forward, the initial members of the council are comprised of the city representatives who are to my left, stage left, house right. And I wanted to recognize each of them down the road here, down the column. We have representing Mayor Eric Garcetti, Hillary Firestone from the Mayor's Office of Sustainability. The Mayor's Office is a great partner in creating a sustainable city. He has been very active on this. We are working with them on PACE implementation and numerous other issues. Then we have, did I miss somebody? Oh, okay. And I've got this big screen in front of me, so I'm used to sitting on that side without the big screen. I see Joe Campbell's next, who's representing Joe Buscaino, council member, who is one of the appointed members on this, doing the great public works. Then we have, I have to peek over my screen here. Representing the Los Angeles Department of Power, we have David Rahimian. Not only do we have a representative from DWP, which is crucial for our work here, but in David we have a lifelong resident of the San Fernando Valley, which for me is very important. That's the area I represent. Representing the Public Works in Los Angeles Bureau of Engineering and its general manager, Gary Lee Moore, we have Ken Redd. The Bureau of Engineering will be another great partner for us. Ken heads the wastewater and Proposition O clean water bonds. Representing the Clean Tech Incubator and its executive director, Fred Walty, we have Michael Swords, another crucial partner in the implementation of the spirit of the MOU. I've worked with Michael on numerous issues in LALCV and many others for many years. So we really have a fantastic group. I also want to recognize we have Councilmember Paul Koretz, who is here. All of the council members are part of this, and Mr. Koretz, I want to give you a chance if you want to say a few opening remarks as well, as a courtesy to my legislative colleague.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've never been that involved in the Sister City movement, but I'm here both as a longtime supporter of Israel and someone who's very aware that Israel is generally ahead of the rest of the world in many areas of technology, especially water use. I've met with a few folks over the years, but especially I finally overcame my fear of flying and took a trip to Israel in December, and got teased about it by our previous consul general who met me over there. We had a conversation, particularly with some water experts in Israel, and it sounds as if Israel has not completely solved its water problems, which obviously if Israel runs out of water, especially in the middle of the Middle East where close friends are often lacking, it would be of grave difficulty. And between water recycling and desal plants and other things, Israel has largely solved their problem. We haven't. And there are a lot of things that I believe we could learn from Israel. There are a lot of things that the DWP could implement. I know Israel uses almost all of its recycled water. We use very little of ours. What's the technology? What's the political will that got Israel to around 90% or so of their usage and ours not as successful? What have the experiences been with the desal plants? Were they a good idea? Where's the technology? I think there are a lot of questions for us to ask and a lot that we can learn. And I'm here to ask those questions and make sure that we create the partnership that we need to ask Israel to help solve our problems, and to a much lesser degree to share our successes and help Israel solve its problems. I think having both the city of Los Angeles and the country of Israel without a major water problem is a big step towards the security of both. So I'm excited that we're taking this first step, and of course, having spent many years in support of Israel, I'm also glad that we are continuing to work closely together.
Thank you very much, Mr. Koretz. And because of my screen problem, which I'm getting used to, I failed to recognize Christine Fry, who is here from the office of Councilmember Felipe Fuentes, and specifically, he is chair of the Energy and Environment Committee, which is a critical committee for this effort. I'm his vice chair on that committee, and Christine is here in his place, and we're very fortunate for that, and I appreciate that. In fact, I'm going to take a minute now and just have each of our ex officio members who are representing go down the line and just say one or two words about yourself or why you're here. And we'll start with Mr. Campbell, and we'll work our way down. It doesn't have, just to give a quick hello and to the group. Please, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Joseph Campbell. We welcome you guys. My boss is on the Public Works and Gang Reduction Committee. He's the chair of it, and welcome.
Christine.
Good afternoon, Christine Fry. I staff Felipe on the Energy and Environment Committee, and he sends his regrets. He's actually out of town right now working on water issues, so I'll be sure to share with him everything that we learned here today. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm David Rahimian. I work in the Government Affairs team at Department of Water and Power, and we very much look forward to the exchanges that we're going to have from now on moving forward with the State of Israel.
Good afternoon, Ken Redd, Deputy City Engineer, representing Gary Lee Moy, our City Engineer, and I'm the Deputy over the wastewater program and the Propositional Clean Water program. So if I have any expertise, it is working with water, and we're very excited about water recycling and cleaning up the stormwater and using that to beneficial uses.
Hi, my name is Michael Swords. I'm the Vice President of Partnerships at the Los Angeles Clean Tech Incubator. We are an incubator based here in downtown Los Angeles that helps early stage clean tech companies grow. We have about 18 companies currently in the incubator. We've had about 30 come through our program. We've raised about $50 million so far for our companies. And we've recently launched several globally focused initiatives. And we've developed partnerships through our Global Innovation Network with nations in Europe and Asia and Latin America. And we're very interested in developing stronger ties with Israel and Israeli companies. So I'm very much looking forward to participating in this task force.
And last but not least, on this side, who I'll pretend like I saved the mayor's office best for last, as opposed to having the screen blocking my view of you. Ms. Firestone, would you please introduce yourself?
Yes, hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Hillary Firestone, and I'm with Mayor Garcetti's Sustainability Office, which is a new office that Mayor Garcetti created with this administration, and we are very excited to be collaborating with City Council and the departments and with Israel on working on this issue because it is a priority for the city. So thank you for including us.
Great. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you all for being here. So the next step is we're going to appoint leaders from the Los Angeles community who are going to add their breadth of knowledge, experience, and accomplishment to this already august group. So I'm going to read we have 5 folks initially to start on this task force. I'm going to read each of their names, and then when I'm done, we'll have them come up and we'll hopefully unanimously affirm their membership. So first, we're going to have Jacob Lipa, who is the president of SOMAS and the Los Angeles Business Council. He's an expert on solar development who has worked in Israel and the United States. And we'll call you up in a minute, so just stay there. David Nahai, who's next. No stranger to these halls, David is. Former general manager of the Department of Water and Power, a great advocate for the U.S.-Israel relationship, longtime friend. Next, we have Jacob Siegel, president of the Southern California Israeli Chamber of Commerce. Currently, Mr. Siegel is the chief business officer for the MTI SureTouch Mobile, a non-invasive, FDA-cleared, pain-free, radiation-free digital breast exam. Then we have Lee Wallach of Faith to Green, who, as I mentioned, was the person who originally brought me the idea for the California-Israel MOU, also a good friend who I've worked with in environmental movement for many years. And we have Mr. Glenn Yago, who's the senior fellow and founder of the Milken Institute's Financial Innovation Lab and a leading authority on financial innovations, capital markets, emerging markets, and environmental finance. So without objection, it is this body's will affirm all of those members. Hearing no objections, you are all now members of the committee. Please come take your seats. Their name tags should be on there. I should flip the name tag.
Alphabetical order.
Yeah, we can flip the names. And then while we're doing that, I'm going to ask each of you we'll go down the line just to take a minute and tell us about yourself and why you're part of this and what your interest is, very briefly, and we can start. Here you go, Jacob, hidden by the screen.
Jacob Lipat, I'm the president of SOMAS and the CEO of another company called Micropolitan. We are really doing a lot of work in the water business, in the energy business, and since I'm also from Israel, so this is just a wonderful combination. I really appreciate being part of this body. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mr. Nahai.
Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, let me thank you, Councilmember Blumenfield, Consul General Siegel, for convening this task force. My thanks also to Councilmember Koretz and the rest of the council members for voting unanimously to put this together. I think this is a tremendously important day, and there is much work to be done. This is an outgrowth of the California-Israel MOU, which took so many years to bring together. I will say one thing. That trip that we were on together in 2009, I remember being shown around the exhibit hall of WATEC, and I was absolutely just astounded by the array of inventions and creativity that I saw around me. And I asked my guide how this was for such a small country, and his response was necessity. And today, necessity is upon us here in the city of Los Angeles. Necessity in connection with water and the development of water technologies, necessity in connection with energy. I truly look forward to bring my contributions to this committee in the service of our city, and also in the service of the state of Israel as well, because this is not going to be a one-way street whatsoever. Thank you so much for including me.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nahai. Thank you very much, Mr. Nahai. Mr. Siegel.
I also like to add my thank yous to both of you, to Councilmember and to David for having me here this afternoon. As I've mentioned, I am an executive board member for the Southern California Israel Chamber of Commerce. We've been doing this, acting as a platform and bringing Israeli technology to trying to collaborate between Israel and Southern California. Independent of that, I forgot to mention, I'm also on the board of advisors of an Israeli startup. It's called Electric Grid Monitoring. And when Mr. Nahai used to be the head of the Department of Water and Power, we presented. It's a very intelligent sensor that I look forward maybe to collaborate with you, Michael. And again, I'm very thankful to be part of this. Water is a strategic asset, and we look forward, and I'm honored to be part of this commission and do my best to be helpful.
Lee Wallach again. Thank you to our members, Paul, for your vote, Bob, for really taking this and moving this forward. Consul General, David, you've been amazing at trying to push the ball forward at the state level and many levels in difficult times. And there were many times when I think we both thought this might not quite even come to fruition. But we've come a long way. And I hope that we can really, and we've talked a lot about water here, but we have so many. Whether it's a carport or still energy is still an issue. We still have many, many issues that, quite frankly, Israel can have quite a impact upon. I like to say there's nothing bubbling out of the ground. Well, actually, I used to say that. It's actually changed. It's bubbling out a little faster in Israel now, but I say it hasn't been, so it bubbles out between their ears. And Israelis have really come to the table with quite a bit of innovation. We're very similar. I look forward to connecting, and we've been connecting now through Faith to Green for almost 10 years. It's been a lot of years that I've been working with Councilman Blumenfield and others. Faith to Green has actually helped sign over $1.5 billion in hard contracts for Israeli companies. We want to see more collaboration, especially in government. And bringing our government entities together. Thank you to not all of our government engineering, LADWP. There's a lot we can do together, David, and we want to do more. So I am very, very excited about this. Thank you again for bringing us together.
Mr. Yago.
Glenn Yago from the Milken Institute. And thank you both, Bob and David, and all of you that are here from the city in terms of backing this initiative and working very systematically, not only for the benefit of California and for Israel, but using both of these great beta sites for testing out solutions that will have global implications, as Michael had mentioned on the work at LA Clean Tech and in other places. Most of the year I spend working with our fellows program and being a visiting professor at Hebrew University as well. And they're working on training Israelis to work on these policy and program initiatives that focus on innovations. It's so important that Los Angeles has taken the first step in the implementation of this agreement to be a city that could act as a template for other cities in California and in other places to be a transmission belt for these innovations that can solve the problems of scarcity, not only in water, but in food and agriculture and health, in energy alternatives, that can truly create the economic independence for both of these promised lands. Thank you, and for other startup nations.
Great, thank you, Mr. Yago. And so the next step in this is we're run here by two governing chairs, myself and the Consul General. We thought we would have a layperson chair be the working chair for this committee and to really do the yeoman's work to make this committee function, and someone who is respected on issues, many different issues, someone who's not tied to one particular business or interest, but someone who has had a very balanced approach. And that's why we're asking today to ask Mr. Yago to come and serve as our working chair for this committee. And so I'm going to ask, without objection, for us to affirm Mr. Yago as chair. Seeing no objections, Mr. Yago, you are now chair, and I'd like to call you up here to take the chair spot. I will move to the governing chair spot next to you, and we'll begin the program. I'm trying to move this along quickly because we do have a great speaker that we're all going to hear from, and we're, the real reason why we're here, get right to the work of this task force and hear from our speaker. So, Mr. Yago, will you take your seat? I'm going to hand you my gavel here. And hand the meeting to you for now.
Well, this is quite an honor. Thank you very much, Bob, and all of the folks that are here. I think that in the introductory remarks, we've covered the main issues of what the objectives are in terms of addressing the key points of global scarcity that can compromise and cause problems for the economic development, both in California and Israel and the rest of the world. These areas of scarcity that Israel has had to focus on in food and in water and in energy and in health, those basic things and those basic necessities that are key to the most important driver of economic growth, which is human capital, which is key, of course, in the diversities of populations and the talents and skills in both countries and elsewhere throughout the world. So it's by working through our own problems that we're able to look at transformative solutions in other places. And that's what this great opportunity is of bringing this type of partnership together. I think with that, I should move quickly to our speaker. Very honored, a very dear friend and colleague from the State Care Center and from Ben-Gurion University. But first, I want to invite to introduce him, the representative of Ben-Gurion University here in California, Philip Gumpertz, to introduce our guest today, Professor Adar.
Mr. Chairman, Honorable David Siegel, members of the Council, City Council, and ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor and privilege this afternoon to introduce one of the foremost experts on water research in Israel and probably in the world today. It's my honor and privilege to present Professor Alon Adar, who is the head of the Zuckerberg Water Institute for Research at the Blaustein Institutes in Sde Care at Ben-Gurion University. So without further ado, may I invite Professor Adar to address this council. Thank you.
So as Alon is coming up, I just want for all of us to be thinking about this in the context of the task force and the information we're about to see in terms of framing the questions of how these can become operational questions in terms of implementing this. Clearly, the importance both of this memorandum of understanding and the initial intent, both the governor and the prime minister emphasized this at the signing, for it not to just simply be a press release or a photo opportunity, but to result in some actual outcomes. So as hearing this important information on the experience and the technical expertise that Alon brings to us today, to think about how this can become into a sets of operational solutions or problems that we can define that might have interventions that we can actually frame and finance and develop in the future through this type of public and private partnership. Alon.
So good afternoon, chairmen, members of the council. It's really a privilege for me to introduce the so-called life legend experience of the State of Israel, how we managed to overcome water scarcity, and to share with you some of these novelties. This is just an example. And I would like upfront to emphasize that these parameters that I'm going to elaborate on cannot be taken as is and be implemented here in California or anywhere else in the world. If at most it can be tailored to the local parameters. Every region, every country, every state has its own parameters, its own constraints, and what the message that I'm going to deliver, I would like to deliver, is that if we manage to overcome this problem in Israel, in the Middle East, it can be done almost everywhere else in the world. So without any further ado, I would like to have the presentation. So overcoming water scarcity in a sustainable way. What I mean by maintaining enough water for the end users, but not less important, maintaining the adequate water quality in such dry region in Israel. What you see here, the photo of a settlement of a village in the Arava Valley in Israel, I think it demonstrates the entire theme of this presentation. And I share the value with you, David Nahai. It came out of a necessity. This village in the valley is not connected to our so-called national water distribution system. And as you can see, they are doing very well. The agricultural sector over here is really very successful, and they rely on local water resources. And as you can see from the surrounding, it is an extreme arid region. So how we managed? If I may, it doesn't work. Okay, now it does. You can see Israel is part of the desert, international worldwide desert belt. In the left, you can see the delta of the Nile. You can recognize it by the dark color. Sinai in the center, extreme desert. And to the left, to the right, north of the Gulf of Eilat or Gulf of Aqaba, we see that Israel is a bit darker, but still desert region. Let me just tell the fact that in the region, we already proceed and use more water than nature provides us with, more water than God gives us in the region. Just a few examples, or one example, it is less than 20% of what is recommended as a global average, which is 1,400 cubic meters per capita per person per year. So the water in the Middle East is a scarce resource, and immediately I change it into a commodity. Because what is unique in Israel, that right from the beginning, water, although it's a natural resource, is dealt as a natural scarce commodity, like oil and gas. Okay, and the challenge is to close the gap between what is available, between the supply and the demand. And there is a huge gap, huge gap. And having said that, we managed. And let's see how. So in order to add to that complexity, let's emphasize on the fact that all major water resources in the region are transboundary, cross-border water resources. And here you see again the delta of the Nile. You see the Suez Canal, the dark, line connecting the Gulf of Suez and the Mediterranean. And into the right, you see Israel, and Israel is much darker. It is darker because of the land is irrigated, the land is cultivated. However, if you add this fact that all major water resources, the Jordan River, Lebanon, Syria, Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, Israel, Palestinian Authority, the mountainous aquifer, the West Bank, Palestinian Authority in Israel, the coastal aquifer, Gaza, Palestine, Israel, even the Nubian sandstone aquifer underneath Sinai in the Negev Desert, Sinai, Egypt, Israel. With all the political complexity, it can be, a mess. And actually, this fact, and in spite of the fact that it is a scarce commodity shared by so many countries, some of them are very hostile, it was not served as a trigger for a conflict. On the contrary, it was actually a catalyst for collaboration. And up front, I would like to point out right now that even after the failure of the Oslo Accord, the only active commission still functioning among Israel and Palestine is the Water Commission, because we all recognize the importance of water as a resource for the region. Okay. The goal is to bridge over water shortage, securing sufficient and adequate water supply by implementing novel water innovations and technologies in two ways. One is improving water use efficiency. Mainly, the main consumer is the agricultural sector, but not only. And if that is not enough, to develop new water resources, reclaiming sewage water and desalination of seawater and brackish or saline groundwater. However, that was done simultaneously. We didn't go in a row. We took it as a parallel task in order to be able to come up with enough water or enough and sufficient water to close the gap between demand and supply. That could not happen without an appropriate infrastructure. What you see on the screen, these blue lines are the water distribution, are pipelines, mains and laterals of the national water distribution system, transferring water from the north, from the Sea of Galilee, practically from the northern Jordan River, down to the south. So the entire country has one unique water distribution system, not just transferring water from north to south, but also on the left-hand side, being able to connect between surface water and groundwater reservoirs. So the mountainous aquifer, the coastal aquifer, the wells are connected to the same system. And nowadays, the desalination plants along the Mediterranean coast and the coastline or shore and the inland brackish water desalination plant also inject the water, the water, new water so-called, into the same blue system. Good, fresh water, the most expensive one. The green lines are those lines that transmit or transfer brackish water to end users that can accommodate brackish water. Some crops, such as tomatoes, asparagus, peppers, even grapes, can accommodate brackish water as is. So the government, the Mekorot National Water Company, established a separated water distribution system. We call it the green lines. And finally, and we are very proud of that, the red lines. The red lines are the purple lines are those lines that transmit treated, highly quality treated sewage water reclaimed from the metropolitan area of Tel Aviv, Haifa, and Jerusalem, and transmitting the water where it is safe to use the water by the agricultural sector. With this kind of infrastructure, we can come up with the melange of the adequate quality of water to the end users. Some of the farms get 3 types of water at the gate of the farm, and it's up to the farmer to decide which water he will use. Depends on the quality, depends on the pricing. Okay, let's start. In the 50s, we tried to prove ourselves that we can take virgin desert land and turn it into a fertile land, what we see in the middle. However, after proving that methodology and technology, we realized that we cannot afford it. Because in such cultivated land, in open field, we lose by evaporation about 25 to 30% of the applied water. We cannot afford such a luxury. So we moved into so-called controlled greenhouses in order to save on water. So the first task in order to overcome the water scarcity is to elevate water utilization efficiency. And of course, saving few percent in the agricultural sector means a lot of water because they consume about 68 to 70% of the water is consumed by the agricultural sector. So open field cultivation is a history in Israel. We cannot afford it. Even in greenhouses, over sandy soil, we introduced the so-called drip irrigation system covered by PVC lines in order to save on soil water evaporation. And this is, as you can see here in the red circle, it is not just to save on water, it is mainly to save on the other precious resource, which is the soil. Because when water injected into the soil, immediately it interacts with the soil minerals, and when it's evaporated, only H2O, pure H2O evaporated, and the salts are left behind, and we do try to avoid soil salination, because soil is another precious resource, not less than water. So we moved into so-called isolated confined soil root zone. which became very common, as you can see here. Sleeves of plastic. The roots are confined inside these sleeves where the drippers are there, and we use the so-called fertigation system. The fertilizers are injected with the water in order to save not just on water, but also on fertilizers, which is a very expensive component here in the agricultural sector. So actually, with this kind of cultivation methodology, no matter what kind of soil you have, you can use it everywhere, because this is small amount of soil. It just depends on the so-called microclimate within the growing greenhouses. With this kind of methodology, the farmers managed to get into 92% irrigation efficiency. I repeat, 92% irrigation efficiency. With flood irrigation here in the United States, they hardly make it to 60%. That means only 60% of the applied water is consumed by the plant during the photosynthesis process. It's a waste. Here, 92% of the given water is actually transpired by the plant. And some amount of the rest of the 8% still are harvested at the end of the sleeve, recirculated, not just saving on water, but to save on unused fertilizers by the root zone. Even in open field, subsurface drip irrigation has been developed, which allows us even to irrigate with low quality of water and lets the so-called the microbial activities in the root zone to polish the water. So as you can see here, even under these circumstances, open field, once the drippers are buried 1 foot below surface, we managed to get to 90% irrigation efficiency. Okay, in order to be able to accommodate it, we developed a quite sophisticated system. Actually, we irrigate the plant rather than the soil. We introduce sensors, temperature, moisture, air moisture, soil temperature, all which control the so-called photosynthesis. And even, as I said, even in such open field, we managed to get to about 90% irrigation efficiency. All computerized, all controlled by computers. All these sensors that you can see here actually control the system. So what is the barrier here? In order to disseminate this know-how around the world, education. Farmers around the world, unfortunately, not in Israel, not in the United States, but around the world, are considered to be relatively low class, less educated people, not in our country. In order to accommodate with such a sophisticated technology, you need highly educated farmers. So the education, basic education, is the barrier. Another way to cope with the water scarcity is to use lower water quality, such as brackish water. What you see here, these are grapes that developed, shoots of grapes developed to accommodate brackish groundwater. Yes, even in soil, in sandy soil. And you see the plastic covering the subsurface drippers in order to avoid soil evaporation from the soil. Once such shoots are developed, they are grafted with commercial species, Merlot, Cabernet, Syrah. And when irrigated with brackish water, a lot of sugar is accumulated in the fruits, and actually the quality of the wine is really by far higher comparing to other crops coming or irrigated in the same region with fresh water. But not only grapes or trees. Here you see vegetables grafted when they are 3 days old, grafted automatically. With that, we can grow peppers, cherry tomatoes on brackish water. These are the green lines that allow us to actually utilize low cost of low quality, relatively low quality of water. Example, melons here. These melons, they are green in the outside, they are dark orange in the inside, sweet as hell, because irrigated with brackish water. BGU melons, Ben-Gurion University melons developed in our university. Mini watermelons. They are mini because they are irrigated with salty water. but then they are sold as personal watermelon in those fancy restaurants around the world. In Japan, a few months ago, I saw in a supermarket it is sold by $48 a piece. If they are ready to pay, we are ready to sell. Another way to save on water, again, using so-called low quality of water for high cash crops. Now, high cash crops, not necessarily common agriculture, but here we have the aquaculture. In these greenhouses, no flowers, no vegetables, fish. We all know that the oceans are deprived for many species. Now, it turned out that oceanic species can accommodate brackish water. Once acclimated to brackish water, they are very dangerous, because if they, one, may jump out of the lagoon into the nearby stream, it can change the entire marine ecology. And those oceanic species are very wild and aggressive, and they can really change the, ecology, the marine ecology or aquatic ecology. However, in the desert, if such a fish will jump out of the pond, out of the lagoon, in 10 minutes it's a dry, dead fish. So no risk to the environment. So here we grow fish, oceanic species, sea bass, labrak, Denise, barramundi from Australia. And because these water, although brackish, they are produced from, I would say, more than 1 kilometer below surface. What do we do with they are expensive, and what do we do with that water after we have to, change the water in the lagoons, because the fish contribute ammonia, phosphate into the water. Chain of users. The ammonia can easily be converted into nitrate. Phosphate is well appreciated by the plants. If you add some potassium, which we get for gratis almost from the Dead Sea, actually you mix this water, and instead of dumping this water from the fish pond, we use the water for second end user. So the effluent is not a waste. And as you can see here in the horizon, in the Negev Desert, olive plantations, jojoba or jojoba plantations use this water coming out of these fish farms. So two end users pay for the same unit of water. Two end users pay for the same unit of water. Again, allow me to emphasize, because it is a commodity, it is appreciated by the users. They pay for water and they have to save because it's a precious resource. So nowadays in the Negev Desert, we produce oil, olive oil. We used to import olive oil from Greece, Italy, and Spain. And during the last 12 years, because of dry years in the northern Mediterranean area, or the southern Mediterranean European countries, mainly in Spain and Italy, we started to export olive oils. In my definition, it's like selling ice to the Eskimos. We sell olive oil from the Negev Desert to those Mediterranean countries. Ornamental fish. These ornamental fish, it's a big industry. Japan, Singapore, and Hong Kong control the European market. They are 14 flying hours from the market. We are only 4 flying hours from the market. This fish, they can be raised on brackish water, which is relatively cheap. Again, what do we do with the water after we have to release the water to the environment? So here in this lagoon, this farmer in the desert, in the Negev Desert, instead of just dumping the water, he grows lily flowers. So the same cargo plane that takes the fish in plastic bags to the market in Europe also ship these lily flowers for €1 a piece for these fancy restaurants and hotels. And when the water is ready to be shipped, less ammonia, less nitrate, he takes this water after the lily flowers, takes the nitrate away, and they irrigate the date plantation in his neighbor. So 3 end users enjoy the same unit of water. This is just an example of the philosophy and the practice that farmers in Israel use in order to save on this precious resource. Okay, finally, we are looking for high cash crops, as I mentioned. Here, what you see here, not too far from Eilat, about 20 miles north of Eilat, north of Aqaba, this farmer, this kibbutz, they use the brackish water to grow algae. Algae for what? In these transparent tubes, as you will see in a minute, they grow green algae, which is known as the Haematococcus fluvialis. This algae was harvested from the Pacific Ocean. It's naturally, appearing in this, grown in the ocean, in seawater quality. But with some kind of adjustment, they can appreciate also brackish water. When exposed to the sun, which we get for gratis in the desert, they create the axaxanthen pigment, which is what makes actually the salmon looks pinky, because they harvest it when they migrate in the Pacific Ocean. The Norwegian salmon is not pink at all. So nowadays, when we consume salmon, it is artificially colored with artificial pigment. However, in this kibbutz, they harvest the algae, they sieve it, dries it up, and sell it for $2,500 a pound in the market. Now the farmers cannot afford it because the food industry discovered this, and they use it as natural food colors, for the cereal, for the yogurt, for whatever. This is a high cash crop coming out of the desert. So this is the salmon with, and this is the salmon without this pigment. The other type of algae, spirulina, used to enrich our food, our cereal. We grow it in the desert on lower quality of water. And finally, the Duniella, with the beta-carotene. Here it is near Eilat. This is consumed like mushrooms in Japan. Again, they are willing to pay, we are willing to grow it. Okay, so this is just examples of how we utilize water in an efficient way, how do we save on water, and there is always the question whether or not this water saving will enable humanity to avoid water shortages and provide water security. Well, in my opinion, at most, only temporarily mitigate water scarcity. We shall not be able, and I read it, to increase and meet the demand of water, and water here is a synonym for food, by simply improving water use efficiency, because one cannot sustain water and food supply with a diminishing amount of water and continuously growing of population. Very simple equation, very simple equation. So what we have to do is come up with new water. The first technology, method, and we implemented it, is reclaiming sewage water. As you can see here, from the metropolitan area of Tel Aviv, metropolitan area of Haifa and Jerusalem, we treat the water into the best quality we can think of, and we use the water for irrigation, mainly in the northern Negev. That's why you see Israel darker than the surrounding countries. And as you can see here, even cotton came back to the market because cotton consumes a lot of water. And we are very proud. Israel reclaimed last year 82%, this year 83.5% reclaimed effluents, which serve as 68 to 69% of the water consumed by the agricultural sector. The highest level in the world, with all modesty. Next to us is Spain with 28%. So that's how we can afford even growing cotton, again, with drip irrigation. It is a very sophisticated method because the effluents or even the treated water, contains a lot of dissolved organic compounds, and there are many, many technical aspects of clogging of the drippers, so on and so forth, and we manage quite well. This is a new novel technology of treating water. I think it's known already here in California. This was introduced by EFFC company, which they manage, instead of invest energy in treating water, to to create energy from the treating process. So actually here they introduced two chambers, one aerobic chamber, and with the right circuit they managed to decompose, so that the decomposed sewage actually provides the energy not just to decompose the organic material, but also electrons are transmitted from anode to cathode, creating energy. So it is self-sustained treatment facility with zero demand of energy, and if well maintained, surplus of energy can be delivered into the grid. So actually, we are talking about microbial fuel cell rather than chemical fuel cells. Again, just an example of a new novelty that was materialized into a working technology. Reverse osmosis desalination. These are the last few slides. It is not enough to save on. It was not enough for us to save on water. It was not enough for us to introduce reclaimed sewage water. We had to come up with additional new water. And when the time was right, I mean, from economical point of view, pricing, comparing to the alternative source of water, we were ready to construct the mega plants for seawater desalination. So here you see 3 of the plants out of 5 nowadays functioning in Israel. And if you can read the table or not, this year we actually desalinate beyond 500 million, almost 600 million cubic meters a year are desalinated, mainly from seawater, but also from brackish groundwater. Ladies and gentlemen, it is almost 50%, about 45% of the domestic consumption of water in Israel. Desalinated water. If our economy can afford it, many other economies can do the same, providing that the water sector is managed in an appropriate way. This year, or next year, we shall reach 605 million cubic meters per year at the average cost, with today's cost of energy of about 65 US cents per cubic meter. Well, when I quote this number here in California, people tell me farmers will not be able to cope with that. Well, we pay more. And again, if our economy can cope with that, I think others can do as well. However, nothing comes free. As you see here, and unfortunately it doesn't work well, what the problem is how to maintain the RO membrane, because salty water are pushed against the membrane, pure water are living on the right side, and at the bottom we have the brine discharge. There is a lot of challenge to decrease the discharge of brines. We are working hard toward zero liquid discharge, coming with pure crystals. There is still a long way to go. And if we are not very careful and we do not release the brines on time, crystals start to form next to the membranes, and they look very nice under the microscope. However, these blades are as sharp as knives, and they can kill any membrane. One scratch, and the entire cassette is gone. Biofouling, when we pump water from the sea, there is a lot of biomass coming from the sea, and we have to avoid settling of the biomass or covering the membranes to avoid biofouling. And finally, let's admit, this is a very energy consumption technology. Nowadays, this figure is not up to date. For every cubic meter, 256 US gallons of water, we need 3.5 kilowatt hour of energy. Is it much? Well, depends. If we are going to desalinate, now we desalinate about 500 million just in Israel. What about Palestine? What about Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan? Syria? They are dry countries. So pretty soon, we shall see in the Middle East about 2 billion cubic meters a year desalinated, and then the energy becomes quite substantial component. By the way, this 3.5 kilowatt hour, it is less than 20% of the total cost. So energy is not the most expensive component in the desalination. The most expensive is operation and maintenance. So we think about alternative energy. Here we see 400 square yard solar dish, which concentrates 1,100 sun units into 1 unit area. So, this is the most efficient solar power, but still, comparing to the current conventional energy source, it is more expensive to use the solar rather than electricity from the grid. However, we have to get ready. We have to prepare ourselves to change into green alternative energy. Solar, or as you can see here, wind. This windmill nowadays is used to produce electricity. So what it does actually, you convert mechanical energy into electrical energy, DC, direct current, losing about 5% of, efficiency just by transmitting, converting mechanical energy into electricity. What we propose is to mount these kind of windmills offshore on pontoons and use a very simple gear transmission to pump water, maintain the mechanical energy to pump water from the sea, and by the time the water is pushed to the seashore, about 40 to 60 bars of pressure is created in the pipeline, what is needed for the reverse osmosis. So with this kind of technology, again, a prototype has been created, it has been patented, a prototype has been created. We look for every avenue that we can find alternative energy to be ready for the future. Nowadays, the common conventional energy is more feasible money-wise. Okay, what about the future? This is the last slide. There is so much we can expect from the reverse osmosis. No matter how efficient we shall be, we can decrease the price down to 50 cents. From theoretical analysis, this is too expensive. We can accommodate it, but not many societies, it will take them a long way to go before they will be able to accommodate, 50 US cents per 256 gallons of water. So here we think about, alternative membranes. Instead of reverse osmosis, maybe thermal hydrophobic membranes that will let vapors go through, and vapors are pure water. And to create vapors, you don't have to create pressure. You can just heat the water and you create vapors. And if you have just to heat the water, maybe solar energy can be incorporated, and here we shall have a real solar distillation or solar desalination system. I would like to end my presentation here at this particular point saying that these are just examples of how novelties were materialized in order to, can I have back the presentation, please? Thanks. Just as an example, what can be done. And we managed to do so with a lot of research. The academic institutions and institutes in Israel were given resources to get wild, go wild and look for alternatives. And out of these wild, so-called crazy ideas, some were found to be feasible, and prototypes were developed into beta sites, and beta sites later on were developed into a real technology. Okay. So the origins of novelty are already mentioned in the Bible. Here, I cannot end up without a bit of humor here. Moses, in my opinion, was the first water entrepreneur. The spoiled people of Israel, after 40 years wandering in the Sinai desert, they started to complain that they don't have enough good quality of water, and Moses was smart enough to hit the rock and come up with fresh, nice water. But even before that, You know, they were so spoiled when they were running out of Egypt, they demanded dry pass. They didn't want to row the boats. They didn't want to get their feet wet. So they demanded Moses and Aaron to provide them with dry pass across the Suez Gulf. Try to imagine if we could leverage it into so-called modern technology that would help us today to save a lot on bridges. So as I said, novelties are already, the origins of novelties are already in the Bible. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alon. Professor Adar, we wanted to request any comments or to be submitted as we go, before we go into the question and answer. If you have any public comments that you'd like to make, there's some cards circulating, I believe, and those public comments are invited and appreciated. So I think we can open this up for some questions and discussions to Professor Adar, perhaps again with going back to the framework of trying to think about how that might inform the search for possible assignments that might emerge within this task force that would be meaningful and useful both in Eilat and both in Los Angeles and elsewhere. Yes, Councilmember Goretz.
I think desal is pretty promising, but I know especially in California, there's been a lot of questions about one, the environmental factor, whether the technology is up to snuff in terms of sucking in marine life into the system and outputting brine, and whether that's too much of an environmental problem for California sources to be taking that step, and also the high cost. So I think Israel was in a more intense need up until now, but in the middle of this drought, where do you think we should place desal in the conversation as we try to increase our local water supplies?
Thank you for this question. I hope somebody will raise this issue. I will start from the end. High cost? High cost is a relative term. It's relative to the alternative. And the alternative in our case was to freeze our economy. So we went and started to construct these mega plants, and I emphasize mega plants, because only with these mega plants we could reduce the price or the cost at the gate at that time to 52 cents per cubic meter. I'm talking about the year 2004. Nowadays, because of elevated cost of energy, it is, as I said, about 65, 68, depends on the plant at the gate. Now, the environmental issues. Allow me to say the following. Whenever we interfere with Mother Nature, there is a toll. We have to minimize it. We have to take the so-called holistic approach, providing water and minimize the impact, the negative effect on the environment. Yes, we pump in some marine fauna, and we inject back the salt into the sea. We monitor it very rigorously. Until now, we cannot tell on any side impact to the marine environment on the Eastern Mediterranean. I cannot guarantee that it will last like that forever. It depends how many plants will be constructed. But in order to achieve it, we survey the offshore topography, submarine water topography, and we identified the spots or the region where the currents are the highest, and we inject the water, the brines, right into that region so it is mixed as fast as possible. And as I said, until today, and the green people, the environmentalists, they monitor it very, very rigorously, and thus far they cannot show any negative impact. Having said that, in the Gulf, the Persian Gulf or the Arabian Gulf, the salinity was elevated during the last 15, 18 years from about 37 grams of salts per liter to 41. And of course, the 47, I think, 47 or 45 desalination plants along the Emirates coastline are to be blamed. I'm not sure about it. Because during that time, remember what happened about 20 years ago. The Shatt al-Arab, which is the Euphrates and the Tigris, the two major rivers that used to flow into the Gulf, nowadays contribute 0 gallon per year. All the water along the Tigris and the Euphrates used by Syria, Iraq, and Iran. So it's hard to tell whether it is the drying up of the Shatt al-Arab River is to be blamed, or both. And let me end by saying the following. What is the alternative? The population in the world is growing. Just in the Middle East, west of the Jordan River, the population will be doubled between 18 or 23 years from now. And this is the difference between pessimism and optimism in the Middle East. We already mine water. We consume more than nature provides us with. Water is a synonym for food. So where the food will come from? What is the alternative? Are we praying for a disaster? God forbid. So we have to come with more food. Food is water. And all arable land is already grosso modo taken. So if we want to produce more food, either we have to go for more efficient agriculture, which is obvious, but this will not be enough. We have to get into marginal basins, marginal land. That means arid or semi-arid basin. That means we need more water. It will not come free. There is a toll. We have to minimize this toll.
Just a quick follow-up, if I might. You said that there's some effort to try and minimize the brine and improve the technology.
Yes, towards zero liquid discharge, yes.
How's that going? Because that seems to be the biggest environmental problem with the process.
There is already, it has been materialized. There is already a company that they use solar and dry wind energy, and they take the brines and actually come up with crystals, salts. It is not cheap. It adds about 7 to 10 cents per cubic meter, which is a lot. However, I think that this technology will be improved, and there is, something to look forward. But this is not the only one. Solar drying up of the brines is the next thing that we are working on. And once achieved, it will be a great solution to those countries that have a lot of brackish water far away from the ocean. Like in Australia, the great artesian basin in Australia, in the Kalahari, in Namibia, South Africa, but also in the Sahara Desert. So yes, it is a technology that we have to further work on it in order to lower the price and make it feasible. Economically feasible.
David and Hai.
I cannot hear.
Is this working? Okay. I wanted to come back for a second to Councilmember Koretz's question about seawater desal. But let me first thank you for a truly informative and engrossing presentation. I think we all learned a tremendous amount from it. I wonder if you would agree with me on two observations. The first is that, and we started this discussion with the word necessity, and I truly believe that for Israel, building these desal plants and turning to the Mediterranean as a source of water was a matter of necessity. After you've done everything you can for water efficiency, after you're reusing something like 80 to 90% of your wastewater, what else is there to do after your aquifers have been depleted over the span of time, and because of some perhaps less than responsible practices in the past that one would have to admit to? But here in Los Angeles, we're at a situation right now where we recycle a small percentage of our wastewater. We have a long way to go on stormwater capture when we get our rain. Our rate of conservation is nowhere near that of Israel. As a matter of fact, you have a conservation ethos that's almost inborn in your population, which is something that we need to inculcate into our kids as they grow up here. And we have an aquifer that is suffering from contamination, but which we must save. It appears to me that we have to do those things first before turning to the Pacific Ocean. And it may be that if the drought continues, that we will have, like you, no choice in the future. But we have to concentrate on things like wastewater recycling, stormwater capture, greater conservation, aquifer remediation, as things that are less costly, less energy intensive, less environmentally deleterious. But here's what I really want your comment on, which is that the technology that you've developed in Israel for seawater desalination is a technology that can be applied in so many other places, right? For aquifer remediation, for brackish water desalination, for in terms of agricultural practices. And it seems to me that the fact that LA may not have as its top priority Pacific Ocean desalination, that should not stop us from nevertheless turning to Israel and Israeli companies and take advantage of this technology that they've developed, because that technology is applicable in so many other areas as well.
Let's stop here. If you don't mind, you raised so many issues. Let me address two. First of all, you mentioned less responsible water abstraction from aquifers. David, we mined those aquifers knowing that we take a risk. Mm-hmm. And in order to avoid seawater intrusion, we use the reclaimed sewage water to construct, like they do in LA, mm-hmm. an hydrological barrier avoiding seawater intrusion. And we mined water 10 kilometers away from the seashore, maybe 30 meters below seawater level, temporarily, because we knew that in about 10 or 12 years' time, we shall have enough water and we shall pay back. And that's what we are doing now. We are paying back, and we fill those aquifers, depleted aquifers, in order to reconstruct our water saving account. And groundwater, those aquifers, are the best water saving account you can think of. There is nothing like that. Now, you mentioned different alternatives that should be examined or maybe materialized before you go for seawater intrusion. Seawater desalination, I'm sorry. Right. David, I am not here to tell the city or the state of California what to do first. I mean, you have to explore all alternatives, and you have to set the objective function, the appropriate one, and the most common sense is to put in is the cheapest alternative, but including the environmental derivatives into the equation as well. Give it a value, because the environmental parameters also have some values. Okay? With that, you have to assess what is feasible. Your political system is different. Right. In your case, you have water rights, junior water rights. Okay, you have so many agencies who develop, maintain the different water resources from the Colorado rivers, from the north, from groundwater. We have a privilege in Israel that water has been nationalized even during the British, still before the establishment of the state, during the British Mandate. It's easy. It's a national commodity. And there is a national water authority, and their life is much easier than the life of the politicians here in California. But you will have, again, I remember what I said at the beginning. You cannot adopt it and take it as is. You can take the parameters and you have to tailor it to meet the constraints, the local constraints here in the Valley and in California in general. It is nothing that you can take as is and you know, it's not off-the-shelf product.
Right. Yeah, I think my point was that technology, though, can be utilized by us. The technologies that you've developed can be utilized by us.
David, it's not the same. The membranes that we had that worldwide developed for seawater desalination are not the same, and the operation is not the same for seawater and brackish water. It's different. It depends on the chemical composition of the raw water that you introduce into the system.
Oh, thank you.
Willie Wallach.
Thank you, Professor. I appreciate your presentation. We must do more on the wastewater effort. I would agree with folks. In fact, on our last trip to Israel, some of the folks on there will remember Mary Leslie, who begged that we don't go to one more wastewater treatment plant, but it was important that we learn about this. The one thing that has really made that difficult here is I think one reporter that coined the term toilet to tap, and that destroyed a whole effort that had been underway for our purple pipe system. Desal is critical as well, and I would, with the chair's permission, vote for a future field trip, because the reality is just down south in California, we do have a desal plant that has been built right now, and an Israeli technology. And I think it would be a perfect field trip for this particular group. But it's a incredible technology that's being used, that's been used and improved upon. Something that's been in Israel for some time. My question for you is, how many of these emerging technologies, especially today, are really being seen across Israel, especially by government? I've seen, obviously, on the water side, and Mika Road has done an amazing job. On the solar side, not so much. I know your expertise is water, but I think you know the field in general. Solar, it's been impossible to get a solar power plant. And in fact, Israel Technology powers hundreds and hundreds of megawatts, thousands of megawatts here in our state of California. But in all kinds of technologies, have we seen Israel really use its own technology more than it has? Because again, it has in water, but I've seen so many places where Israel, the state, has not started using the technologies that its own community.
Like what?
Well, like solar, for instance. We do not have a large-scale, solar power plant in Israel today. There are, other technologies that Ben-Gurion is coming up with that it's hard to get into the system, into the bureaucracy. And I've seen those technologies at Ben-Gurion. Is it becoming easier now? I haven't been back in a year, and I'm wondering if things are getting easier.
I'm not a solar expert, but I know enough to tell you that because of the current hydrocarbon market, gas and oil, solar is more expensive. Having said that, Israel is obliged by the year 2020 that 10% of our energy will be green energy. And you said it's difficult, but the obstacles had been removed during the last year, and 3 mega plants, solar mega plants, are now two are under construction in the Negev Desert. So it's coming up.
And 8 more on the way.
What's that?
And 8 more in planning and on the way.
Yeah, but 2 are under construction nowadays. Again, even with the solar plants, many environmentalists objected. In the Arava Valley, this is the migration corridor for the birds from Europe to Africa, back and forth. It will interfere with the navigation system, whatever. I'm not expert on birds and not on solar, but I know that every interference with Mother Nature has a toll. Now regarding materializing innovations. I think that in Israel, it is relatively easier comparing to other countries. In general, startup country, okay? Regarding water, it is not that easy. But not only in Israel, worldwide. And the reason is, the water arena is shared by so many disciplines. Water, qualities, chemistry, biology, microbiology, physics, mechanical engineering, I'm not mentioning hydrology, groundwater hydrology. So many disciplines are involved, and the language is physics and mathematics. We work with, when you deal with groundwater, is modeling, transport of dissolved constituents. So many disciplines are involved that when an innovation is ready to be developed, most of the entrepreneurs hesitate to touch it. Even the most intelligent one. So he's a physicist, he's a chemist, he's a microbiologist, but so many has to assess its feasibility or the feasibility. And in order to overcome this obstacle, a very simple platform has to be established. Because the obstacle is to overcome the pilot. If I come, and I think the best example is, from my personal experience, I had a project with the Israeli military system. They contaminated groundwater with perchlorate. It's very common here in California, JPL. I don't have to tell you the story. But Israel is a very small country, much smaller than California, and we cannot afford losing large portion of the aquifer because of perchlorate, and perchlorate is really nasty compound. We discovered a cocktail of bacteria that can decompose, in a vial, in a small vial, can decompose the perchlorate. Patented? Hey, we thought that everybody will jump on it. Let's construct a biochemical reactor or microbial biochemical reactor, and here we solve the problem. Not too many, actually almost none, took it because we've proved the so-called academic feasibility. I could write a patent, I could write a nice paper, and that's the most I could do. Every entrepreneur would like to know what is the feasibility to leverage it into, a working reactor. And here is mechanical engineering. You have to engineer the reactor. You have to figure out how the microbial will be adapted, the microbes will be adapted, mode of operation, maintenance. Without prototype, nobody touched it. And we are prima donnas from the academy. Nobody expects us to come up with a prototype. We don't have the resources to construct a prototype. So who will do it? The entrepreneurs hesitate why they should invest in such early stage. It's below VC. So what is needed, in short, is a platform that we will bridge between academia and the industry.
Perfect.
Because such a platform, and I call it a pilot laboratory, and in our university, I'm the one to be blamed. I established such a laboratory. At the beginning, they were willing to chop my head off because I invested so much on such a laboratory, which is not an academic entity. But soon enough, it brought so many projects in because for every R&D, if there is a substantial R in the R&D, the R is research. Research are graduate students. So this is what's needed to overcome this,
That's a perfect setup, as somebody was just saying, in terms of where not just R&D, but getting to R&D to the demonstration stage, and where some California partnerships could be very, very, very important. Ken Red from the Bureau of Engineering.
First of all, it was a great presentation. It got me thinking about 100 different directions, Bill. What type of wastewater treatment? You said you treated the wastewater and then used most of it for irrigation. When we treat it, it either goes back into our receiving waters. We're doing a small amount of reclamation, which is reverse osmosis, and then we are using some of that as seawater intrusion barriers, and we're working with water and power to to do more. We're looking to expand 2 of our wastewater reclamation plants, but we're going with the reverse osmosis. Are you doing, and then obviously the biggest problem with that is if you're not right on the ocean, then you have the brine to dispose of. So I'm just curious to what degree did you treat the water before you went to irrigate?
We have different facilities. The largest one, which accommodate all the sewage from the metropolitan area of Tel Aviv, tertiary treatment, and then we let it percolate through about 60 meters of weather zone, and we let the bacteria to further polish the water, and then we pump it for irrigation. And we do not desalinate it with reverse osmosis. In Haifa area, they use different methods. They use, again, tertiary treatment facilities, and then they store the water in lagoons, like they do in Singapore, for example, for almost a year, again, and let the algae polish the water, and then they use it for irrigation. Nowadays, in small municipalities, it's more sophisticated. For example, the example I brought on the screen, intensified, small space, but highly intensified water treatment facilities, and actually you get high quality of water, really high quality of water. Look, we export our product worldwide without any limitation, also because of the method of irrigation, drip irrigation and subsurface drip irrigation.
Okay, thank you.
Just be curious, do we have any sense of the amount of non-revenue water we have here versus Israel? Because that's another area that in Israel we've had a lot of working on smart networks, on monitoring of leaks and things like that. Is there a sense of that? And just curious.
Sense of
leaks.
Leaks. Mr. Nahai, do you remember?
Yeah, I can add to this. We just had a presentation about this in Energy and Water Committee.
Under the bus.
Go ahead.
The percentage was not as high as had been thought, but nevertheless, you see some very spectacular blowouts, like at UCLA or on Sunset Boulevard. You take a look at the economic damage, not just loss of water, but the economic damage that comes from that. And it does show that we do need to pay a lot more attention to our infrastructure generally. And so I think one of the kind of menu of water supply measures that we have is exactly that, infrastructure repair, to make sure that we minimize any kind of loss of water through leaks, breaks, so on. And in Israel, a number of companies in Israel have developed really wonderful sensing technology to help with that. So I think we should take a much closer look at that.
Elon, just 1 second. Councilman wanted to have a comment.
Just to follow up on that, it was interesting. We were talking about this in Energy and Water Committee just last week about the non-revenue water, and it turns out in LA that they're saying it's actually only about 5% of the actual water is non-revenue. Now that's taking the amount that goes through that's charged for versus the amount that they're putting in, but that doesn't account for leaks in pipes after it goes through the meter. I know for myself, I recently changed my lawn to drought-tolerant landscape, and when they pulled up the pipe, they basically, pulled up a very a piece of rubber that was completely full of holes that was just leaking water all over the place. Mm-hmm. I would never have known that except for these high water bills, but that wouldn't show up on the non-revenue water because it was on the other side of the meter. So it's an interesting question, and it's one of many of these things where we could learn in terms of the technology.
And such a high percentage of our water is outside of the house in residential uses, is exactly beyond the meter. But go ahead.
Let me provide one more comment, please, to Mr. Nahai regarding future possibility of desalination. If you would like to explore the possibility and the feasibility of seawater desalination or utilizing desalinated water, you have to be ready to integrate this water into so-called other sources, because the water coming up of the desalination plant are too good, are too pure. And it doesn't make sense to lower the quality because the price will not be cheaper, okay? And the solution that we found is that we mix it. We create a melange with groundwater, different sources, and surface water. We mix it. We so-called lower a bit the quality in order to come up with more or less natural quality of water, the ratio between the dissolved ions, to maintain the ratio between the dissolved ions, to maintain almost natural water quality. Because otherwise, you will run into problems. You will run into problems. And because of our system was national system, it was relatively easy to implement. So if you consider desalination, you have to look for a different water distribution system that can accommodate more than one source of water into the system.
Agencies work together seamlessly as if they were one agency when it comes especially to wastewater recycling. And I know that this is something that LADWP and Bureau of Sanitation under the leadership of the City Council are working on.
I'm sure when the situation will become further worse, you will find a solution to collaborate and cooperate between all these fragments, you know, different agencies and different water companies. For the time being, you are in a very good position, I guess.
You're back to the word necessity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Were there some
Sure.
questions?
Additional question. I mean, a couple of comments and question. I mean, it's interesting about the price point because that is going to be the determinant. We don't have that same the price point where the mother of the invention is the mother of necessity, where we've gotten to such a high price in water where we start doing a lot of the things that Israel has already done. Because it's not that we don't, in some cases, don't have the technology. In some cases, it's just not worth the money at this point. So I'm curious, what are the types of things where it's not just a question of how much it costs, but some of the technologies that we may not be using? Be curious if there were things that you've observed in California, Los Angeles, that on a technological basis that we're not taking full advantage of. And the other thing is, you know, the perchlorates thing really perked my ears because I represent the San Fernando Valley and we have a major problem with perchlorates in our groundwater. We're trying to figure out how to clean up that groundwater, and it's considered very expensive. Probably costs $600–900 million a year, or $900 million
Nowadays,
clear it up.
the cost, I mean, Siemens and GE, more or less the same. It's about $1.1 million per metric ton of removal of perchlorate, 1 metric ton. That's what they like that's what they ask for. In Israel now, there is a pilot plant with a new methodology, and if successful, it's already a pilot, and I think we are moving it toward the beta site this year. If successful, the price will be half.
That's great news, and I would urge that pilot to move as fast as possible. As you know, we have a water bond out there which has about $900 million for water cleanup, and you know, some of that water cleanup, certainly in the valley portion, has to do with perchlorates. So the faster a technology can be out there like that, the faster we can take advantage of it in California and spread our dollar a lot further.
Yeah.
That's precisely the type of idea that surfaces here that would be really interesting to explore in terms of a partnership on a beta site here in the Valley.
Yeah.
Based on this. So we should really try to pick that up at the task force. Any other ideas like that or questions? Yes, Ms. Firestone.
A lot of the techniques you mentioned had to do with agriculture, and I'm curious to understand how you deployed these technologies. Was it something that the farmers paid for themselves? Was it something the government paid for? Was it mandated in terms of how you were able to roll out these new strategies for farming?
The system in Israel is that the government established a demonstration farms. It's RD&D, Research, Development and Demonstration Farms, 7 all over the country, which serves a platform that bridges between farmers and my colleagues. When we like to try our innovation in a field scale, namely beta site, those demonstration farms provide us the facilities. The farmers have free access to those farms. monthly seminars. And actually, they come even to our professional seminars. It's open. So the dissemination of know-how, it's very efficient and very fast. And since they have to compete in the market, those smart farmers, they look for every opportunity, to improve and to save. They're highly educated people. Mm-hmm. So no, there is no subsidy for that. They simply are exposed to new technology, new method. They try it or they see it implemented in those RD&D farms. And sometimes they approach us and say, hey, don't go to the farm, come to my farm. Try the better site in my farm. They want to be the first. So they are highly motivated. They are highly motivated. So this is the system. They have the RD&D farms all over the country. And it's open for the public.
I think it's probably the lack of exposure to these technologies for the agriculture industry here. So that's something that I think would be useful in terms of sharing these innovations so farmers know that they can install them in their own land.
Follow up on that. On that point, I think it's interesting in terms of the relationship between the farming and the urban and how we, how we can benefit, even though we're a very urban area here in Los Angeles. A lot of the efficiencies that you spoke about were in the farming sector. And so in some ways it behooves us to partner with our farmers to the north and the south and figure out ways that we can have those second, third, tertiary uses of the water, because we can only do so much just within our own geographic boundaries. But when we expand our efforts, much the way Israel is more holistically as a country with farm and urban, there may be other opportunities that we're not taking advantage of now. And that's helped me expand my thinking a little bit in terms of how I think about water, because prior to this conversation, I was thinking much more just within our geographic boundaries, and I realize now more about the interaction may benefit us. So I'm looking forward to working on those issues with this task force.
That's great. So should we take was there any public question here? I think we should. I'm sorry, yes, excuse me.
I don't know if this is on, yeah. I'm just going to make a quick plug for an event that the Los Angeles Clean Tech Incubator hosts. It's called a Global Clean Technology Showcase, and it just ended last week, and we had 40 companies from 10 different nations come and demonstrate their technologies. We had entrepreneurs from Europe and Asia, and unfortunately we didn't have any from Israel, but I would like to suggest that if there is interest from entrepreneurs in Israel to demonstrate their technology and to pitch that technology in front of a room full of potential customers, potential investors, that we talk about maybe next year having a special section set aside for Israeli companies. We've received nothing but great feedback from the entrepreneurs who came, from connections that they made here at the showcase, and I'd love to talk to you further about how we can get Israel and Israeli companies more involved.
Am I allowed to? I share the same, and I really welcome what you say, but what I discussed is earlier stage, not a technology yet. Innovation with a clear indication that it can be developed into a technology. This early stage, to leverage it into a prototype, is the hardest parameter that we have to overcome. Yeah. And this, I bet, even your organization do not take.
Well,
maybe I'm wrong, but this,
well,
that's what
I'll give you a plug. I'll give you a plug for another platform. The City of Los Angeles, through the Department of Water and Power, is building something called the Lacretz Innovation Campus. Mm-hmm. And this is going to be a world-class facility in downtown LA, 60,000 square feet of space.
That's what you have to do.
Well, part of this building, 7,500 square feet of space, is going to be set aside for a prototyping and maker lab, where the widgets that some local technologists are creating are going to be actually built. We're going to have fabrication machines. We're going to have 3D printers, all the, the high-tech equipment that you could want to create these kinds of prototypes we're going to have there.
This is the way to go over and overcome this valley, because these deficiencies, at this stage, we experience most of the failures.
That's a great invitation also to engage some of the Israeli and Californian companies to come together, because clearly these things can emerge from that collaboration. Jacob or Joseph might comment to that as well, but I think we need to take a public comment from, right at this point, go ahead. From Ari Bussel.
Thank you very much for a most illuminating afternoon. It's quite a pity, even though some people left, that the public gallery is empty. I mean, I think that every one of these meetings should be attended. You can bring the Milken High School kids here. We can bring UCLA students here. When we talk about partnership, one of the things that we can learn from Israel is embedding the importance of not only water conservation, etc., from early age, from early on. It includes field trips, etc. That would be a phenomenal thing. When we talk about education, you came to an urban area which looks green, but it's really an arid area. It's a desert by definition. I found the presentation fascinating, and I presume it's going to be broadcast over the city channel. It is particularly disturbing because it presents almost a fantasy land. And Professor Adar, this is not an attack against you. I'm trying to defend Israel. When Wallis Annenberg, the philanthropist, opened her space for photography in Century City, she dedicated the opening month to an exhibition by National Geographic called Water. They had a special issue. It was an April issue. No one stood up to demonstrate, but 20% of the exhibition showed how cotton being grown in Israel, cotton being a very water yeah, but that was neglected. They showed banana plantations. They showed Israeli bathing in fresh water and thirsting everybody else in the neighborhood. Maybe the partnership between Israel and Los Angeles beyond beyond the business aspects, which are very formidable, should focus on the education that Israel is at the forefront. We sat and heard here a fascinating, anybody who has not been to Israel yet, you can actually see these things in Israel. Is it not time maybe to invite Wallis Annenberg, who is local, to hear such advancements? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we're, any other discussion at this point from any of the other members or anyone here? So I think we're at the point of closing. We're regrouping and invite all input in terms of trying to develop the work plan and to plan the work and to work the plan of this task force. So really need all the help we can get on that. Thank you.
Just as a closing comment, I want to just add my thanks to our speaker. We really appreciate you coming here, being here. Yeah, we need to get this word out. It'll be on television. That will help. This, from my perspective, is a great first inaugural meeting of this task force as we start to shape what we're going to do. As a task force, we have a very broad mission, and part of it is hearing speakers who illuminate. Part of it may be taking a field trip, as was suggested earlier. And part of it is figuring out action items that we can do. This task force was set up really as a one-year project to try to figure out, to make some progress through this partnership and see what can be done through this partnership. So I'm really excited. I also want to thank our working chair, Glenn Yago. You've done a great job in chairing this meeting, and I look forward to working with you in shaping this task force and working with all of you in shaping this task force to make it really something productive. And from my perspective, this is a great first start. So thank you all, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
You want to
Thank you very much. Thank you all. And with this, we'll adjourn. Thank you.